And good morning, everybody. We're live. Happy Friday, January 14th, 2022. Super glad you're here. This is the Food Safety Chat Live. And if you're new to our program, this is a chat about all things food safety, believe it or not. And we go live every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And with this, what you'll find here is that this is a conversation around food safety. It's not a presentation. It's not a lecture. This is a discussion, and we love the interaction, and we're here to help answer your questions. And for those of you who don't know, I am Brian Armentrout. I am with the Food Leadership Group Food Safety Foundation, based in Loveland, Colorado, where Jose and I were just talking about the weather, and I think it's a little nicer where Jose is. Jose Sabal is with Jose Sabal, so Sabal Food Safety Consulting down in Miami, Florida. How's things today, Jose?
Wonderful. I got a kind of a rough week, I don't travel that much, but I have some clients that, I always take very good care. And those two involved, one was an internal audit and the other one was the monthly training that they have with me. So it is what it is. But you know what? Mask all the time, taking care and washing, whatever, not a big deal.
Not a big deal. And my team member Renee is on as well too, and he'll help moderate our discussion. So one of the things we like to do here in the beginning is kind of log in here and let us know that you can hear us, and that where in the world are you? Because this is always amazing. I am in Loveland, Colorado, and that of course is in the U.S. And I throw that in there because a lot of times we get people from all over the world who join us for these chats, which is amazing. We love that. So if you're getting up in the middle of the night or you're doing some night work, we're very happy to have you join from the other side of the world. So thank you. Yeah. So any big plans for the weekend, Jose?
Well, I mean, big plans or not big plans, that depends on your on your approach. But for me, are big plans. I'm going to have a bike night ride in some bicycle trails in Jupiter, which is I don't know, an hour north from where I live in Miramar, Florida. And well, this is going to be interesting because based on them, when the trails I know that are made of a combination of sand and coral and whatever, so are very white in color. And because the moon is going to be close to full, those trails should be, beautiful. And the weather is going to be kind of in the 60s, so it's going to be kind of cool. Yeah, and it's at night, so lights and all the things you're.
Oh, that's gonna be
Hopefully,
fun.
I'm not going to fall.
That'd be very cool. One of the things so we did a Christmas gift exchange in my family, and I found a really cool gift. And so, I mean, for some of those cooler nights, you may consider this. So they have like the beanie hats you can wear, and now what they're doing is they're building the LED lights into the beanies.
Oh my goodness!
And I've also seen ones that have Bluetooth headphones built into the beanie, like into the wool hat, so that you can listen to your music. So that may be something you want to consider.
Well, we don't have that over here, as you can tell. The weather here is not that cold.
Well, it's all relative, right? Because 50 degrees for you is that's shorts weather out here, and for you that's death and destruction.
Anything below 70, by definition, here in Southeast Florida, it's freezing temperature.
I would like to when you pull out these different names of the areas around you, so Miramar and Jupiter and stuff, all these famous names from the space program, right? That we all hear.
Well, yeah, I guess.
Tammy, good morning. Nice to see you in Austin, Texas. Boy, that place down there is growing like crazy, crazy, crazy. Kind of like here in Colorado. So one of the things, Jose, is before we begin our topic and begin discussing that today, we need to, of course, everyone.
Oh my goodness, yes.
You have to join us. You have to join us for our ceremonial first drink of the day. I do like your new cup. That is very nice. The flower one was pretty, but that one's nice. I like that too. And it's all about your tea. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Good. Well, I guess good day, Mohammed, joining us from Bangladesh. Very, very cool. Have not been to Bangladesh.
I have not.
No.
Nope.
Been to quite a few places around the world, but not Bangladesh.
Yeah.
So let's, our topic today is something, it's kind of one of those things, right? In quality, Jose, we talk a lot about how do we prevent problems from happening, right? It seems like in our jobs, in quality assurance and food safety and things like this, we spend a whole lot of time running around fixing things after they happen, right? So you have corrective actions and you have complaints from consumers and all the things that seem to take up a whole lot of time in our day. And one of those things I think that we need to pay more attention to and really focus in on is the preventive side of things. And if you can keep something from happening, that is a huge benefit and it makes your life a lot easier. One of the things I always used to train my quality managers when I was working in industry is the very challenging thing if you work in quality and food safety and some other fields as well, is if you're doing things well, nobody notices, right? Because everything's going well and everybody just
everything's working,
happened, right? But it takes a lot of work to make that happen.
Yeah.
And that kind of leads to today's topic, Jose, which is sanitary design, right? If you get this right, your life becomes so much easier.
So much easier, because it's not just so much easier. It's so much easier.
Right. So part of this, right, is with equipment, how does the process normally work, right? So depending on the size of the company, you need some new equipment, or you're thinking about putting in a new line, and the operations guys are like, geez, we need some new equipment. And they go to the engineering department or the maintenance guys and say, we need a new machine. We need a new line. We need a new filler. We need whatever, right? And a lot of times then what will happen is they'll say, okay, we need this new piece of equipment. And the maintenance guys are like, okay, geez, they start looking around, and maybe they start looking at used equipment sites. They start trying to figure out what they need. Does it fit? All these type of things. And the main thing they look at is cost, right? And
oh yes.
And they will then source and find a piece of equipment that meets their needs, right? And their needs is not our needs, right? They're looking at it mostly from a physical layout and efficiency standpoint. How fast is this machine going to run? And as anybody knows who has looked at operational efficiencies and Six Sigma and things like this, is that you're trying to minimize bottlenecks in your process. You never will get there, right? And that's an important lesson for people to remember, is there's always a bottleneck in your process, right? So
always.
you have batching and filling and packaging and all these type of things. There's always going to be something. All you can do is move it around and minimize it. And the equipment searches can be an interesting process. And unfortunately, right, the quality people are not usually involved up front, right?
Yes, that is correct.
So all of a sudden,
very unfortunate.
Yes, all of a sudden, right? I'm so as the vice president, I'm touring one of my plants and seeing what's going on and visiting and these type of things. And I'm walking around, and all of a sudden I see a new line, or I see a new piece of equipment, and I'm like, "Hi, what's that?
What is it?"
And they're like, "Oh, that's the new thing that's going to do this wonderful thing, and we need this for the new Costco business or whatever," right? And just like, "Oh, okay." And then, of course, right off the top of your head comes about 50 different questions, right, Jose? Of, oh, great.
At least.
Yeah. And you start looking at it and you're like, okay, where did you find this? Oh, we got an amazing deal. We got this thing cheap. And you're just like,
oh my.
There's a reason. There's a reason it's cheap. And let's say that you're making cheese or something like that, right? And they're like, well, where did you find this? Oh yeah, there was this old banana processing facility that didn't need this anymore, and they had it sitting in a field, so we bought it.
Yeah.
Right. Not even the right industry. And this manifests hidden problems, right? I saw this morning on Food Safety News that there's an issue with cut cantaloupe again that FDA has announced, right? So I started thinking about the whole Jensen issue with their cantaloupe and the process that they were using, right? They upgraded their equipment, they thought, and they put in a system for washing them that didn't work.
Yep.
And
The equipment was designed for washing potatoes.
Yeah. And it didn't do the job. They thought it was doing the job and it didn't.
Yep.
Another big thing I always see on these type of things too is the food safety team is not involved.
Yes.
The food safety team needs to go in and look at this equipment and bless it before it's even used, right?
Yes.
And a lot of times that doesn't happen. These things are done on the fly.
Yes.
So that kind of leads into today's topic then, Jose. So it's sanitary design. And how do you do this? And how do you look at it? And how, as food safety professionals, we need to make sure that we're involved very early in the process.
And you know what, Brian? If you look at the Gfsi requirements for benchmarking, there is a section about equipment and about equipment that is non-conforming and equipment that is conforming. So, I mean, what is conforming? Define what is conforming under Gfsi. Well, any equipment that is fully in compliance with sanitary design, that's conforming. So who's the one inside the facility that has the knowledge necessary to determine that we have the right sanitary conditions in that or this or that or that or that piece of equipment?
Right. And that falls underneath the, if you're following FSMA, right, and FDA and the regulations for that, the preventive controls qualified individual needs to be involved with that, because one of the preventive controls, sanitation, allergen control, critical, absolutely critical for your operation. In a past company, speaking of allergens, we had a plant and we were modifying this plant to produce new product. And this plant had not dealt with this allergen before. Right? It was almonds. And so we were using almond butter. And oh my goodness, right? This equipment was not designed for this function. And it took us months and months and months of work. We lived in that plant, modifying equipment to make it cleanable again. And we did some calculations on allergen tests. We had a 10,000 gallon mixing tank, right? So not a really big tank. And we did a calculation, Jose, and figured out that if, in order to get this tank clean and get negative, not found allergen results for almond residue in that entire tank, we could only have about a eraser's head worth of residue in that entire system.
Oh my goodness.
Right. And so it was something that when we were looking at this, right, so as the company was saying, oh, this would be really amazing to start making this, wow, what a nightmare that was, getting that system up. It took us a long time, but we finally got it. And those months of not being able to run properly cost the company a lot of money, right? So that's part of what you need to think about with equipment design.
And you know what, Brian? Going back a little bit to price. Okay, so hey, we found this equipment very cheap. Okay, in the lifespan of any piece of equipment, the biggest cost, hold on, the second biggest cost is the maintenance and the cleaning of the equipment. Okay, the first cost is how likely is this equipment to cause a recall of my product.
That's a really good way to think about it, because when the average recall is costing $30 million, what is really the cost of that equipment? Nothing. Right? Even if it's $1 million piece of equipment, it's still a fraction. Well, and it is too, right? No machine is ever, when you buy a piece of equipment in the scenario that we're talking about, it's never right. It's never right, right? You've got to modify the conveyors, and it turns out that the motor that's running the system isn't big enough, so they have to put in a different one, which puts stress on the systems, right? So then the maintenance guys are out there welding and modifying, and you're just like, you're watching this going, oh my goodness. And do maintenance guys necessarily know how to sanitary weld?
Nobody knows.
Right? All kinds of problems can develop out.
And seams must be smooth after seaming. So you should have someone that is very knowledgeable about seaming, welding. So in order to create a very nice weld, and then you need to smooth that weld.
Yep. And passivation and
Yeah.
all that stuff.
Actually, that document that you mentioned, for the sanitary design, uh, has a section talking about the grain after polishing the surfaces.
Yeah, exactly. Because yeah, those little micro surfaces, you think that stainless steel is a cleanable surface and it's always fine. Not if it's scratched up.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, Tetuko is asking here if do we need to be certified EHDG, which is another, it's kind of a standard for sanitary design. I have a copy of that one too. Um, if we need to be certified to that in order to check the equipment, and you know what? I mean, any any certification or any class. I'm not going to say certification. I'm going to say just a class, a training that we go through. I believe that is a very good experience in
Mhm.
your to have with you. Uh, I mean, is it possible that if you give me that document and I read the document, I can do whatever is written there? It is certainly possible in some cases. So yes, it could be done.
Right. Well, and so part of this too, and that's a good point, is that these design characteristics change around the world. So, for
Yeah.
example, in the U.S., right, my main background is in dairy manufacturing, and in the U.S., you have the pasteurized milk ordinance, you have 3A
Yep.
design standards, and these type of things. And when I would go to Europe with my parent company, and we would tour plants in Europe that were making cheese, they had equipment that would never be allowed in the U.S. Bolts and little things that were over open surfaces and non-cleanable areas. I'm just looking at this equipment going, whoa, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So if you go and you buy equipment from a European manufacturer, they may not understand the requirements for the
Yes.
US.
Yes.
And that's what's kind of nice about this, right? Because there's no universal standard for all equipment and all food, you need to kind of look at different industries and say, okay, who's doing things really well, right? So 3A design standards are excellent. The standards that are mentioned here, meat and poultry, amazing standards, right? Those guys have to be super, super careful with how they're doing things. So you can learn from these different industries.
I highlighted a few things in that document. What is the one that we are
Yeah, so
referring to?
sanitary design from the Foundation for Meat and Poultry Research and Education.
There you go. So, I mean, anytime that I'm analyzing, and this is happening, since just a few years ago, but anytime that I'm analyzing any document, the first thing that I'm going to read is who wrote this document
Mhm.
to determine, if the person has the right background or not, and if they are detached from the topic.
Yes.
If you look at all the people that wrote this sanitary design, they're all industry.
Mhm.
There is no one from an external source saying, okay, we need to put some kind of anti-bias here. So because of that, one of the things that I was doing when I was reading the document is to say, well, you know what? Let me see if I can find things here that may not be, uh, may not make sense. Let's put it like that. And
Yeah.
there is a section in, I believe that this is the second or the first one. The first
Yep.
one, the first principle, cleanable to a microbiological label. Um, and in 1.5, Brian, it says surfaces are clean visually and to the touch and pass pre-operation using sight, touch, or smell.
Right.
And I got to say, really? Can you smell bacteria? Can you smell a protein from an allergen? Can you see a protein of viral, or can you see bacteria?
No,
No.
yeah, that's a very good point. And I think part of this, and this is why you need to look at a variety of
So,
standards, right? Because
right.
part of it in meat and poultry is USDA visual inspections.
I know,
Yeah.
but I
And so
mean,
that's part of their mindset. Yeah.
when we had this conversation before, when setting up the chat today, and I mentioned this podcast that I was hearing, the Food Safety Magazine podcast.
Yeah.
When this person was explaining, sanitary design and principles, he very clearly said, it is impossible to see bacteria. Don't do this. This is crazy.
Yeah, 100% right. So yeah, we'll dive into this. And so part of this, guys, is Renee is in the chat. And what
Hey,
Jose is
Renee.
referencing here is a document we're going to share with you. So if you want a copy of this, just drop Renee a note. You can either do it in here or you can contact him on LinkedIn. He's on LinkedIn, and we'll get you this, right? So it's the Sanitary Design and Principles Checklist, right, by these guys. So this is a nice checklist. But again, to Jose's point, you have to remember the context of who is doing what within these type of things.
Yeah.
And so part of it would be, yeah, exactly. So we'll dive into this in just a second. But first off, I wanted to, let's see if I can do this. Whoop, call out our sponsor. EAS Consulting Group is making this podcast possible and allowing us to come to you. So thank you very much for that, EAS. EAS is a group that I'm affiliated with, and they do consulting work in a variety of industries. So food and medical device, automotive, and all types of things. And in the food division, they have over 100 experts like me who have over 20 years average experience in those industries. So these are the type of people who can help guide you through this process and accelerate your learning so you're not making mistakes. So definitely check out easconsultinggroup.com and see the different services they have. They've got a lot of training programs as well, online things and training that you can bring in-house and customize and do different things for your operation as well. If you find a training that you're interested in, when you're checking out, put Brian, Bryan, in the checkout in the promo code, and you'll get 15% off training, which is amazing. So thank you, EAS, for doing that. So with that, we'll kind of dive in, and thank you, Renee, for putting that in there. Appreciate it.
Yep.
So what I did, and we'll see if this works here, Jose, is I'll put the notes in here, the highlights, and then we'll kind of go through the sanitary design here. As we're doing this, as you were talking, one of the things that always helps me organize information, and it's amazing to me how often this applies, is quality information and data in a facility always break down into 3 buckets from our perspective. And you see this in the equipment too, is operational, quality, and food safety, right? So the maintenance guy in our scenario that we were talking about, as they're sourcing machinery, is thinking about things operationally. Is this machine the right price? Is this machine going to fit into my plant? Is this machine running at the correct voltage for my system, et cetera, et cetera? Operational information.
Yes.
Quality information is going to be, okay, is this machine able to seal the bags properly? Is it able to do these type of quality things? Is the lot coating working correctly? Does it run the film that we want? All these type of things. And then, of course, the thing we're focusing on is food safety, right? And making sure that this equipment is proper from a food safety standpoint. And that needs to be determined in advance, because if you're trying to do it on the floor, it's really difficult. So let's see here if this guy works.
Yeah.
Hey, all right, look at that. So what we're doing again here, guys, is we're going through the 10 principles of sanitary design from this Meat and Poultry Research and Education Foundation. So keeping that context in mind, they're looking at it from their industry, right? So what you want to do is, if you work in meat and poultry, hey, great, this is a good thing for me. If not, there's still all kinds of things you can learn from this, right? So pull from what the produce guys have learned, the meat guys have learned, the dairy guys have learned, and bring this into your operations too. Because a lot of these things, they apply and they roll over for each other. And so one of the things I liked here on this document as well, Jose, was they had some principles here that they were talking about. And they said here too, these are principles. This is not an audit, right? These are things that you need to be considering and modifying to your approach. Right. So the first one here is, this is an opportunity for the manufacturers and the users, us, to communicate and understand these things, right? Because a lot of times the equipment manufacturer is thinking along the operational side too. And that's what their customers are telling them. So they're not thinking about the food quality and the food safety elements. So this allows a forum for people to talk about these things. So see, we have a question here. So take Tuco, I'm absolutely destroying your name. I'm really sorry about that. So the only way to prove sanitary design is our cleaning sanitation verification program, ED, swab test, ATP, etc. Well, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay. So I believe that if we take a proactive approach sanitary design is kind of a prerequisite program to the cleaning activities. That's my take. That's my opinion. If the equipment has the right design, the cleaning operations are going to be extremely easy and very effective. So your ATPs or your swabbing for environmental monitoring are going to tell you, oh, this equipment is very clean and remains very clean.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I like that because, so putting the homework up front, as we talked about at the beginning of our chat today, makes your life easier, right? So let's say, for example, you buy a piece of equipment that's really, really hard to clean. That's going to be a nightmare for as long as that equipment is there. Mm-hmm. And some days you may get it clean, some days you may not. And what is FDA going to ask for when they come in to look at your food safety plan? Under your preventive controls, they're going to look at your sanitation programs, and they're going to say, prove to me that this equipment is cleanable.
Yep. Actually, prove me that your environment is clean. Yeah, which includes not only the cleaning of the equipment, but cleaning everything else.
Very good clarification. Thank you. You're right. Environmental monitoring, all these type of things, right? They're all linked together. So let's take a look at this list here. Let's dive in here, Jose. So the first principle they said is what we've been talking about, right? It's cleanable to a microbiological level. And as you said earlier, you can't see the bacteria.
Yeah. So when reading the checklist that it's in that document that we're talking about, and you go to 1.5, be careful because you cannot see bacteria. Right. And if you have in your cleaning procedures, just once the equipment is clean, perform a visually clean observation in order to clear the equipment. Really? No.
Yeah. So Tammy has a very good point here. Nice to see you, Tammy. Thank you. Most equipment is first developed for an initial customer, which means they only took their own environment and process flow into consideration. 100%.
Good point. Yes.
Most large specialized equipment is built to have successful output, not sanitation. Yes, that's operational. Yes. Engineering and manufacturers will never have the same mindset in food safety, the same perspective as we do. They have their own agenda, right? Their own quality regime.
Yes.
You should always look at each piece of equipment with a fresh look to assess hazards, paneling, microchips, 100. Yeah, absolutely. So at a previous company I used to work for, so I ran quality assurance for them, and this is a big company, right? Multi-billion-dollar company. And so I had my different divisions, right? So I had my quality assurance team and my food safety team and these type of things. I had a technical services team, Jose. And this group was the interface between quality and engineering. So if we needed a new piece of equipment, my technical team would work with them to make sure that those design elements were built in, because a lot of times we were buying, $5 million aseptic fillers, and these things had to be perfect. Yes. And so we would work with the German company that was making this to make sure up front that this thing worked to operational standards, cleanability, and food safety, right? And so Tammy's points are right on point there.
Yes.
So that company spent all this time designing that product for us, right?
Yes.
So if you're a smaller company, that may not work because everything else is involved with this.
And you know what, Brian, to your point, in some, conditions, meetings with customers and so on, I'm going to say, well, you may have an organizational chart that shows up who's the owner, who's the president, who's the general manager, who are the other managers, quality control, the PCQI, the supervisors, I don't know, all of the different titles that any company may have. And that is exactly what is going to be used as a reference in all of these procedures in a system. And I said, I'm fine with that from the organizational standpoint. But in a food business, the head of the organizational chart is whomever is responsible for quality control. Mm-hmm. That is the person that knows exactly, or should know exactly, hygienic design, the requirements of the law, the requirements of the customers, the requirements of any Gfsi standard that anyone is following, and if you need to follow any other thing, kosher, organic, halal, whatever, that person is the head of the company. That person is the one that understands the interaction between all the elements in the system. And that is the person that should be saying, oh, maintenance. Okay, so whenever you decide to buy this equipment, send to me first what is equipment, how it works, a layout of the equipment, who designed it, how old is it. I don't care about price. Price is not an issue. Price is not a parameter in this decision. The decision is based on the design of the equipment.
Correct. Absolutely correct. And so in this checklist, I think this will kind of answer a couple of questions that we got going here. So there was a couple highlights here under principles for sanitary design that I like. One of these in here was make sure you have a cleaning protocol provided by the equipment manufacturer. That's a nice test. So if you contact the manufacturer and say, okay, we're looking at buying this piece of equipment, send me the information on how to take it apart and clean it.
Hold on. Let's not say no without having an explanation. Are we supposed to follow the instructions of the manufacturer on how to assemble and disassemble the equipment? Yes, 100%. They design the equipment. They know how it is the proper way to do it. But the frequency on how we're going to be cleaning that equipment depends on our product and our environment.
Yes.
That depends on whatever the manufacturer of the equipment says. Because they may say, hey, you can wash the equipment once per year and work fine. Well, once per year may work for them, but it's not going to work for a ready-to-eat product.
No, that's a very good clarification. The reason I like the question is it tells me whether or not the manufacturer is even thinking about that. Cleaning.
Yeah.
So if they come back and they ask the questions that you're asking, oh, okay, great. So you're looking at buying a piece of our equipment. We're very happy. What are you making? Oh, well, we're making cheese. Great. We have some recommendations on cleaning protocols and different types of cleaners and sanitizers and things that are compatible with our equipment. Let's talk about that, right? If you can have those conversations, that's a gold star, right?
Yeah.
If the manufacturer goes, what are you talking about? Cleaning, who cares? Oh, that's a big problem, right?
Yep. And actually, let me tell you these from, I have not been, except for auditing, but never involved directly in meat and poultry, but yes, in seafood. And I can tell you that depending on the product, you may use acid cleaners or basic cleaners. Mm-hmm. And that decision depends on the product, not on the equipment.
Yeah.
But the equipment needs to hold strong whatever chemical I'm using during the cleaning process.
Right. So for example, if you find out that there are non-food contact surfaces in the machinery that are aluminum, right? Now, if you're using chlorine, you're going to destroy it and you're going to create pitting and you're going to create niches.
Yes. And if you use acid cleaners, same thing.
Exactly.
Yep.
So the equipment needs to be designed. All surfaces are accessible for mechanical cleaning and treatment. Right. Yep. So can I get in there? Can I see what I need to see? Because one of the biggest problems is biofilms, right? If you're creating biofilms, then you got a problem.
Oh, and by the way, those biofilms, Brian, cannot be seen. So visual inspections are not going to work.
Yep. Exactly. We're getting some good questions here, guys. Keep them coming. So Raphael said it's always good to see Raphael here. He's a good supporter of us, and we appreciate it. The previous company he was working for with cheese, he called the food inspector, had to move the machine, and the inspector had great inputs. And then they were able to send that and give that information to the manufacturer to correct those things. Love it.
Yeah.
And so Raphael built on the point I made, right? With the cleaning protocol is not enough. And that's what you said, Jose. I 100% agree. Procedures in US and Europe, very, very different. Tammy said she likes getting the manual ahead of time. Most are not digital. That's true. I've been having trouble finding manuals in English for a metal detector. They're in German, right? It doesn't do me any good. I need that manual in English. So the manufacturer needs to supply this. User says here, if you can purchase new equipment that is designed with modern food safety concerns built into the design, then that's good. But if you're buying older, you must expect that the operational design and cleaning were designed for the standards at that time. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, that's probably why it's cheaper. And there's no guarantee that they even took those food safety considerations into account. So we need to make sure. Cortland asked, are you performing recovery studies of each surface, cleaners and microbiology? Do you use house flora for each surface and what additional microbes? Yeah, definitely.
Yep.
I mean, so there's things you need to consider and think about. That's part of the validation and verification processes you need to have for the equipment to make sure that those protocols are correct.
Yes.
FDA is going to ask for that.
Yes.
I think a lot of companies miss that.
Yes.
In Europe, we touch cheese and taste on the line. We do not trust gloves. Clean and disinfected hands are the rule over here. Not right or wrong, just different. No, absolutely. I worked for European.
Me too. I agree.
And I agree. A lot of times, quick little editorial on that, right? A lot of times gloves make things worse because people in the plants think that the gloves are a magical liner that prevents contamination. Oh, I'm wearing gloves. I can do what I want.
There you go.
Right? Yep. It's like,
and besides that, to Rafael's point, anyone that is putting on gloves, now you will need to add to your hazard analysis the physical hazard of whatever is the material of the gloves. Yep. It's your process.
Yeah, because a lot of times, people, right, they tear those gloves off and chunks go flying.
Or they break because they are touching the equipment or touching something that they may break. It's possible.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, good point.
Yes, absolutely. So see here, so the next principle they had in here. And so with these principles in this document are a bunch of different items underneath those that you need to think about. So that's why I like this checklist, and we're not going to go over them all. Yeah, we don't have time. So made of compatible material, right? So what is the stainless steel? Is it the correct grade of stainless steel? Is it 300 or higher? Does it have the right chromium level in it? These type of things for cleanability and durability. Cloth backed belts cannot be used.
Yep. Oh, by the way, Brian, now that you're talking about stainless steel, great point. Because if you use, according to what I read, and I might be wrong, I might not be reading enough information here, but anything that is 302, 304, or 316, which are the three most typical stainless steel alloys used in the manufacture of food contact packaging, food contact and food packaging equipment, food operations, they are made from any of those types. And you know what? I just read that any of the 300 are non-magnetic.
True.
Why people is using a metal detector, which is using magnetism?
Right. Yeah. So here's an interesting little thing I learned just from experience is that shavings of stainless steel, because of the process of working the metal, becomes slightly magnetic, believe it or not.
I won't be surprised.
Very, very little bit, right? Not enough to make it a strong stick, but it does, it does do that a little bit. So it's kind of interesting. This is a big one for me. Cloth belts, right? You see this a lot.
Yes. Terrible. But I mean, super terrible.
Yeah.
And you know what, Brian? My question, who approved the purchase of that equipment?
Right.
Someone that has, do not have the right background about sanitary design for the equipment.
Right. Well, and I think a good point to bring up at this, right? No company, excuse me, Jose, no company, just springs out of the ground full formed with all kinds of amazing, awesome equipment, right? Odds are if you're coming into a company, there's all kinds of stuff from before that are there, right? So you need to go in and look at these things. And if you find these type of problems, what can you do to mitigate the risk? Or how can you put a plan in place to replace that at some point?
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And let's say that you do have a piece of equipment with the cloth belt. Okay, what can I do to improve the cleanability? What can I do over time to remove this? And in the meantime, maybe I need to have a more aggressive sampling program and environmental monitoring with that piece of equipment to make sure it's not a problem.
But you know what, Brian? I mean, anyone that already has that kind of equipment, so it's up to that person to determine what to do. But if the approach is preventive, you cannot purchase an equipment that is not going to be cleanable, which is a requirement, to a microbiological level, because that is the requirement. So if you're using any kind of a conveyor that has some kind of a clothing material, you know that you cannot clean it.
Right. So I mean, Yeah, I mean, my only point was a lot of times you're in a situation where you have to deal with it, right? Because it's already
Yes.
there.
Yeah. Hold on. I'm getting out of power here.
Oh no.
Yep.
Let's see. I'll take a look at Cortland's question here while you're doing that.
Okay.
Do you perform extractable studies on machine contact materials for your process? Extractable studies. Not quite sure what you mean by that. If you could provide a little more detail on that, I'm sure we can take a look at that question. So, comparable materials. So part of this too, right, is figuring out different metals that may be touching each other. Is that creating a corrosion problem? Things of that nature.
Yeah. Yeah.
Number 3, accessible for inspection, maintenance, cleaning, and sanitation.
Yeah.
Oh,
And that is basically self-explainable.
Right. So if they install this piece of equipment this close to the wall and you can't get back in there, you're in trouble. If they put it this far off the ground and you can't clean underneath it, that's trouble, right? You need to be able to get in there and look at these things. And if you can't, you may be creating a problem.
Yes. Yep. During installation.
Yeah, let's see here. So machinery and chain guards drain away from product zones and are easily removed. That's one of the points they make under here in 3.5. And what's nice about this standard too, Jose, is they're referencing in here where they pulled this standard from, right? So that's nice too. So if you can't do that, how do you know, right? So if you have an area of that machinery that's closed off and you can't even look in it, that's a big problem.
Yep.
So no product or liquid collection, right?
No comments.
Right. And so this does not just mean the food contact area, right? Because let's say that you got a machine with a conveyor and you got motors underneath and different things. Look inside. Are there areas in there where water is pooling?
Yeah. Yep.
Yep. So I saw a piece of equipment recently that had like a cooling apparatus, and there was a cooling box inside the machine. And so it was running off a glycol, right? So you had lines and you would run air across it and things like this. And you couldn't open it.
Oh my God.
Right. So what's going on in there? I don't know. Right.
Oh, you can bet a lot of accumulation.
Right. So the equipment manufacturer, right, they were thinking just of their footprint. It's like, okay, this machine is this wide, it's this tall, whatever. I've got to jam everything in that machine so it's one unit. Right? Because they're making it and that's how they're thinking about it. They're thinking about it as that unit. They're not thinking about cleanability in that situation. Yes. And so that's now something that needs to be dealt with.
Yep.
So good morning, Brian. Raphael had another comment here. I bet in the 10 principles, I will not find what I never find in reality. Employees cleaning must have the same measuring equipment used by quality to control cleanability. Always a problem to give tools to auto control work. Cleaning teams see quality often as inspectors and not coaches. Yeah, right. So okay, here comes the quality guys with their little ATP kits, and they always sample the same areas. I'm going to make sure that those areas are cleaned really well.
Yeah.
So Cortland had a follow up here on the previous. Thank you. Cleaning chemicals allow release of surface chemistry. Yeah. How do cleaning processes chemicals affect product? You mentioned chlorine corrosion. Yes. And how are other cleaning chemicals affecting machine parts, gaskets, ring, plastic parts? Yeah.
Oh, most likely. Yes. Yes.
And that's why you need a good PM program, right? A lot of times in lines and things like this, you'll have gaskets, right? And there's different gaskets from different materials, right? Rubber and nitrile, different types. Yes. And the prices on those gaskets vary widely, right? And so if the maintenance guys are just buying the cheapest gasket they can find again, right? Then you could have a problem, right? So let's say that those gaskets are being eaten away on the inside of that pipe and you have no idea.
Yes.
Big problem. So 5, hollow areas should be hermetically sealed. Oh boy, oh boy. When you look at machinery, right? We have those cheap hollow rollers that they love to use. Oh.
And what about when finishing the equipment? If they use the square tubing as part of the frame, they don't seal the end of the pipe once they are ready to ship the equipment before finishing construction.
Yeah. Exactly. Or they have feet or flat surface for the machine that they just sit right on the ground.
Yes.
And then what's getting under that?
Yes.
Good morning, Shay from LA. Good morning to you. So hollow areas hermetically sealed, right? Frame members, blade spacers, leg adjustments, nameplates. I thought this one was interesting, right? A lot of times these companies are really proud of their equipment. So they put their name everywhere all over the piece of equipment, right? They're branding it. And they may rivet a metal plate onto that piece of machinery.
Terrible.
What's behind that?
Uh-huh.
Crazy.
Yes.
Next one, no niches or niches, depending upon where you're from. Right? I say niches. I don't know why. So this one, 6.3, I thought was very interesting, Jose. Internal corners and angles shall have a smooth and continuous radius of at least 1/8 inch. Angles of less than 135 degrees. So what they're saying is you don't want a corner where stuff can collect, right? You want something where you can get in there, right? Because if you've got these little corners where stuff can collect, it's going to collect.
Yes.
Yeah. And a lot of times, right, those manufacturers aren't thinking about that, right? They're just, all right, weld this to this. That's good.
And you know what? At the end, the manufacturers of the equipment should be using some kind of a guidance document like this at the end.
Oh, that's a good question, Jose. So ask the manufacturers that. Okay, as you're building and designing this equipment, what standards are you using?
Yep. What is experience that they have in manufacturing equipment for the food industry?
Exactly. So Tammy had a comment here. Your high risk is equipment or machines that, number one, can't or don't get opened, and number two, the ones that break down the most. Yep. your high risk sanitation practice happens to your most high performance equipment. Oh, very well put. Thank you, Tammy. I love it.
Perfect.
Right? Yes. So the equipment breaks down during production and everybody's in a scramble and the maintenance guys come running and they're climbing all over that equipment and trying to get it running again. And they don't do a very good job cleaning. And there's a few tools laying around. And here's some spare parts that just the maintenance guys didn't pick up, right? All those things, right? It's all about, again, operational, right?
You
need to think quality and safety too.
Operational from a systems standpoint.
Exactly. Fasteners are not used in or above product zones. Right. So as you look where the product is going, are there nuts and bolts and twist ties and wires and who knows what above that?
Yep.
Oh, man. Oh, craziness. So next principle, we're rocking and rolling now. Number 7, sanitary operation performance. So, this one's interesting. Under normal operations, the machine must perform so it does not contribute to unsanitary conditions and harborage. And the first one here is something that FDA is very, very aware of, and a lot of people don't think about. Buttons on control panels are easily cleaned and sanitized during operations in order not to create a harborage. Yes. So a lot of times, Jose, you see this all the time too, is when you clean the equipment, they take big plastic sheets and they cover stuff. Right? Yes. They cover the panels.
Electrical panels.
They cover the touch screens, all these type of things. And what does the operator spend his entire shift touching and playing with?
Yes.
Right? That's a zone 2, right? So the operator is...
If the employee is touching food contact surfaces or food contact packaging material, that surface becomes a zone 1.
Say that again.
Because that is the definition of a food contact surface. If you have something else that you're touching at the same time that you're touching food contact surfaces or food packaging material, that other surface becomes a food contact surface.
That's interesting.
And it makes sense.
So let's say I'm an operator. We'll concretize this, and I'm running a machine, and I'm making adjustments on a panel, and I'm adjusting the way the speed machine or whatever, and then I'm taking samples of product and looking at them, whatever, and then touching those buttons again and doing that. You're saying that's zone 1.
Yes. Yep. So the question will be, fine that you're protecting during the whole equipment cleaning and sanitizing, but then how do you clean that?
Right. That's a good clarification. Thank you. I hadn't thought about that way.
Yeah. Actually, gloves. And if you don't use gloves, your own hands are food contact surfaces.
True. Very true.
Anyone that is in direct contact with product, food contact surfaces, or packaging material, food contact packaging material, the clothing that they have is a food contact surface.
Yeah. Good point. Good point.
Yep.
So let's see. So that's a good one. So sanitary operation and performance, hygienic design of maintenance enclosures.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
right. So with this machine goes all of the supporting stuff, right? So maintenance may need to install a box, a stainless steel box on that piece of machinery that includes the electrical connections.
Yes.
And they just take that box and they just attach it to the side of the machine.
Yes.
What's behind there, right? Controls and junction boxes are fastened to the frame in a manner consistent with sanitary design. So the maintenance guys are not immune. They're not, they need to follow these principles too.
Of course.
Utility lines are 12 inches off the floor and cleanable.
Yes.
You need to get underneath it. Get underneath it.
And the best way to power equipment is not from the lower side of the equipment. Should be powered from the top.
From the top. I agree. Yes. Number 9, hygienic compatibility with other plant systems, right? So how does this fit in with everything else? Separate exhausts on equipment are supplied from raw and ready to eat. Fan-cooled motors do, this one was like something that's really, I thought this was brilliant. Fan-cooled motors do not blow air on or in the direction of product contact surfaces. So what is around that machine? Now that you've stuffed it in this area, what is around there that can impact the food safety of that piece of equipment?
Yeah, because fans are actually one of those vectors to move environmental bacteria throughout the facility.
Yeah. So let's say above that piece of machinery in that zone 1 contact area is an air conditioning condenser right above the line.
Point.
And you look up and you're like, ooh, hello. Right? Crazy stuff like that. Cortland, do you perform cleaning hold studies? How long after cleaning does the cleaning last before needing a new cleaning, even covered? So generally the rule I always had in place for equipment that's been sitting is 24 hours. So if you go longer than that, you need to resanitize.
Yeah.
You may not need to re-clean, but you at least need to resanitize.
Yes.
And those need to be built in.
And Brian, if re-clean won't be necessary if the equipment is covered after cleaning and sanitizing. So you can uncover, re-sanitize, ready to go. But if it was not covered and it's exposed to the environment, I will say that you will need to clean it again.
Right. No, that's a good point. You need to think about these things.
Yep.
And Cortland brings up a good point here too. So HVAC, right? So let's say, for example, you put a new piece of machinery in a room and it's pulling or exhausting air within the process of whatever it's doing. How has that now impacted the airflow in that room?
Yeah.
Because if you need that room to have positive or negative airflow, it may impact that.
Yeah. Any kind of ventilation, air conditioning system is exactly what bacteria needs to fly around all the facility.
Right. Because as a general rule, right, you always want your highest air pressure in your most sensitive area. So it's pushing air out. Away.
Yes. Yep.
And principle 10, as I look for my little mouse, there we go. Validated cleaning and sanitation protocols, right? Which is what we're talking about, right? Lots of questions around that. So they must be, I like this one too, because this is often overlooked. Cleaning protocols must be safe, practical, effective, and efficient. So if it takes 5 hours to take a belt off to clean it,
the problem there is the design of the equipment.
Right. And again, back to our original point, if this piece of equipment was bought and you didn't find this out until after it was installed, now you got to live with it.
Yes.
Right. And as we all know from manufacturing, right, the goal in manufacturing in a lot of cases is to minimize that as much as possible, right? Plants want to run.
And make it as easy as possible.
Which brings up a good point, right? Because you can now, as you had said earlier, Jose, the price of the equipment is really a very minimal consideration, right? That should be pretty far down the list. So
should not be part of the most important things that you are going to consider when purchasing equipment.
Right. So if your food safety team and your sanitary design team, as they're looking at this equipment and they're comparing two pieces of equipment, and one piece of equipment can be cleaned in an hour and another one can be cleaned in 5 hours, that's a return on investment, right? That's money to the company.
Yes.
That's time that you can run. So over the course of the life of that machinery, that should be considered.
Yes. Yes.
So that's 10, right? Let's see what other comments are we under 10. All equipment components, including belts and product contact components, should be able to withstand heating to 160 for 3 minutes. And again, this is a meat and poultry standard, right? Because that's a lot of things that they need in their areas. But it's a good standard to look at from a microbiological standpoint. Are you reaching times and temperatures in CIP type, clean in place type applications that are going to validate that?
Yep. And if you, and this is one for you, Brian, pumps. If there is a liquid product and you have pumps, well, whenever you are going through CIP, you know that you are going to be pumping that. That means that you have some bearings with some seals that are exposed to that environment. Mm-hmm. So question, are those seals made with a material that is approved to be in contact with food? Number one. Number two, is that material capable of holding whatever the temperature of the cleaning place and the chemicals to prevent that seal to be destroyed by the chemicals?
Yeah, and what type of pump is it? Is it a diaphragm pump? Is it a positive displacement pump? What are the impellers made of?
Yes.
Are they rubber? Are they stainless steel? What are they?
Yep. Yeah,
and that interface, right? Because you have the engine, you have the gearbox, and you have the head, right?
Yeah.
What is that seal between?
Yes.
I've had issues with that. Right?
Yeah.
Which is why I know that. So Cortland, are you qualifying each operator and each swabber? How do you qualify each person on each surface? Yeah. So a couple of questions. So training, right? So your training program. So really you're talking about two different training programs here. So your laboratory ATP testing personnel, whoever's doing that, it may be operators on the line, who knows?
Yes.
You need to have testing programs in place, and with anybody who's performing a test, qualification, right? Are they able to have replicatable and duplicatable results for their testing? Yeah. What is the program you have in place to qualify those individuals to make sure they're performing those tests correctly, right? Because if you have somebody who's doing the ATP testing and they're going boop, right, on a surface, and every one of their results is 0, something's not right.
And you know what, Brian? Even though that I mean, for me, may not be that painful. I'm going to say maybe not the right word, but again, maybe for me it's not that painful. But statistics play a huge role in the validation process of the cleaning procedures.
Yes.
So if you're going to tell me, Jose, I just performed one test after running equipment in winter time in Colorado, and these are the results. And I'm going to say, okay, the results are indicating that the cleaning process is fine. But if you do only that test to validate the effectiveness of your cleaning procedures, maybe, and I'm just going to say maybe, in summertime, maybe those results are not going to be the same.
Yep.
Maybe if there is a corporation that has a facility right next to your house and another has a facility right next to my house, the environment is going to be totally different, because over here we have most of the time above 60 or 70% relative humidity. Is it possible that the environmental pathogens live better over here in Florida than over there in Colorado? Yes. Are you taking that into account to validate your cleaning frequency?
Good point.
Which is going to be part of the validation.
Good point. Well, wow, we are out of time, right? So let's hot topic, right? Huge topic, and what we're trying to cover here in an hour scratches the surface, right?
Yes.
So send your email to Renee. Reach out to Renee. He'll get you a copy of the standard that we've been referencing. A ton of good information. It's a great place to start.
Yeah.
Let's close out here with a couple of comments here. So Martin said, sanitary design of equipment operation, PM, cleaning and sanitizing should be based on common sense, at least common of all senses.
Yes.
Also, gloves are considered food contact surfaces, to your point, Jose.
Yes.
And should be used to protect the food you are dealing with, not the hands of the operator. Yep. And Cortland said, are you using only ATP and not including microsobs? No, you're doing both, right? And it depends on the application.
Yes.
On what you're doing.
Yes.
So, wow, right? So definitely good standard,
was huge.
Good conversation. And maybe Jose and everybody let us know. Drop us a note. Our emails are on here. Is there an area in sanitary design you would like us to dive deeper into?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we can do a show on that. Let us know if that's interesting. We're here to help you. So let us know on those sides. So with that, we need to close out today. And we're back here next week, same time. at 10 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Mountain Time. And we live stream and answer your questions, and we'll tackle a different topic next week. But Jose, thank you again, my friend. Another amazing food safety chat.
Yep.
And we're happy to everybody who was able to attend. Have a great weekend. Hopefully we've given you some good things to think about sanitary design. So much appreciated. And we will see everybody back here next week.
Have a great weekend, guys. Bye, Brian.
Bye.